Welcome to LAPUx Lessons. This podcast is a growing collection of conversations with thought leaders in the online professional development space. Here at LAPU, our award-winning team strives to create world-class online learning experiences that put humanity back into learning. Join us on our journey to innovate in the online classroom and show the world what learning feels like.
This is George Hanshaw, Director of E-Learning Operations, and I am here with Dr. Rob Carter, who was prior service Army Airborne, and were you a Lieutenant Colonel? Is that what your rank was?
Yes.
Fantastic. So a Lieutenant Colonel from the Army Airborne. I was Air Force enlisted, Staff Sergeant type in the realm of aircraft electrician, which taught me a lot of lessons as well. But so the military invested in all of us, whether officer, enlisted, anybody, they invested heavily on creating leaders.
Unlike other organizations where people enter into the life cycle of talent at different points in time, the military basically has to invest in everybody because you're not sure which of those lieutenants is going to be your four-star generals. You're not quite sure which of those privates from somewhere in America is going to be your senior enlisted advisor to the Secretary of Defense or senior enlisted advisor to senior military officials. So we have to have a model that really invests in every individual that enters, because unlike corporate America, unlike academia, where you have people that can enter into that model at different points, from the president all the way down to professors, we have to assume that every individual has the potential. And we have to basically provide a structure that allows each individual an opportunity, ultimately, to basically be a leader at every segment of the way.
And that's kind of, even in the civilian sector, that's the key. You're not judged as a leader by what you do. You're judged by the number of leaders you create, is what we always hear. If anybody's on LinkedIn or anything like that, we hear that a lot, right? So the military does a great job with that. So what's kind of been your experience?
Yeah, that's been my exact experience from day one to day infinity, is that most people that serve, if they really recognize the value, both to the nation and to themselves, an opportunity really to take full advantage of experiences and opportunities to really develop leadership skills much earlier than most people do in the private sector and just in life. An 18-year-old individual enlisted in the military, by the time they're 22, they may be a sergeant, they may be a specialist, they may be in charge of leading other, people their age and maybe younger, basically into potentially harmful environments where they've committed to giving selfless service. They've committed basically to giving their lives so that others may enjoy freedom, as we call it. And so my experience is that the military in general, the Army I'm most familiar with, really invest in what we talk about as a 2 up, 2 down model. And obviously that's been my experience, where I got to know the mission and priorities of my boss and my boss's boss, and then knowing the priorities of the people under me, 2 levels down. And is that model of leadership, I think, is what's been critical to the success of the military, and critical to individuals that served in the military, and their ability to basically translate those leadership skills to civilian occupations. It's really the mindset that's been translated.
Yeah, right. Because that translates Air Force civilian sector as well, where we kind of define the parameters of operation or define the mission, and give people the permission to make decisions within those mission parameters. And when they can do that, that's how you get high performing teams. Military 101. How to get high performing teams is clearly define the mission parameters and let the people on the ground make the decisions.
Yes.
Yeah, and we see that in corporate America when it works well. We see that, and when people don't do that, we oftentimes see things not work well. But you brought up kind of a cool point about service, sacrifice, commitment. We always say, right? Um, and as a leader, from a military perspective, we were always taught service, sacrifice. Uh, leaders eat last is what they say in corporate America, but that came from the military where they say officers eat last, right? Uh,
Yes.
because you got to take care of your people first. So, what's kind of been your experience with not just hearing that as a mantra from somebody in a suit that's comfortable, but being actually where that came from as you being an officer having to take care of your troops and eat last?
People support you not by what you say, by what you do and what they see you doing. So people typically think about, eating, but I think it's
Right.
every aspect of being a leader. If the policy is stay on the sidewalk and they see you cutting across the parking lot, then what signal does that send? That sends that it's okay for him or her to do it, but I got to follow the rules, but they're not following the same rules. So I think
Right.
that statement, of eating last translates to fundamental, good values, and that you have to basically walk the walk and not just talk the talk. And people basically will follow you. And I had a boss early in my career. He said people will follow your lead and your values as much as you're willing to follow your values and live your values. So people going to only do and follow you to the same extent that you're following yourself. And if you deviate from following yourself, people are going to deviate from following you. So as long as you wake up every day and say, I'm going to live the values that I think are important, I know are important, then everything's going to be okay. But soon as you deviate from that, you're going to be ineffective as a leader.
That deviation, that's a slippery slope too, because as a leader, you're magnified. So people see that one slip, you have to, you don't get that back too easily, too
You, you,
simply.
you, you- yeah. In fact, I think you never get it back. They say you may get a chance to go do another job, but normally people, especially nowadays, with LinkedIn and social media, and people going to know more about you when you go into your next job than they did, in the job you left, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
you
they
know,
will.
yeah, so people want to know who's coming. Tell me about them. You can't outrun your reputation because
Oh, I
ones
love
and
that.
zeros. You can't run as fast as ones and zeros, right? And those
That's,
ones and zeros will beat you. Will beat you to your next location, or your
so
next
anybody
organization.
listening to this, take that one home with you. You can't outrun your reputation. I love that saying right there. So any future leader or leader now, that's something they can take home right now. You can't outrun your reputation. And like you said, especially with social media, that's an incredible statement because it's absolutely true. It follows you wherever you go. And in the military, you're asking men and women to do things that most men and women don't have to do, whatever that may be. And they need somebody to lead the way. So, what would you say to folks? What was one of the biggest lessons you've learned? You've already given us a few about leading the way, leading by example. How does Rob Carter wake up those days? Because none of us are ever motivated all the time. Motivation goes up and down. It's that discipline that really gets us through. How does Rob Carter wake up that day where he's like, man, this cot is comfortable. I'm gonna stay, but nope, can't. Got to be the example. How does Rob Carter get up every day and be that example?
It's really leading and empathizing and being a leader that's leading from a path of empathy and humility, and then translating that empathy throughout and permeating throughout the organization. Because just like you're human and you don't feel like doing stuff, you got to understand that they're the same way. And I think, and
Right.
also showing that human side, right? That you could even share to say, hey, I understand it was a rainy, cold day. We're going to be outside. He said, trust me, I did not want to get out of bed either. Right. But our service is bigger than us. No one forced us by gunpoint. We volunteer, support and serve the nation. And there are going to be days that we don't want to we don't want to live up to that obligation.
Right.
We're like, hey, I was just kidding. And we'll say, hey, I signed up, but can I get the paper back? I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but people are dependent on us just like we were dependent on previous generations, and future generations will be dependent on us. So as long as we live from that space of honor, humility, and passion and empathy, and basically say, hey, everybody's human and we'll get through it today and we will get through it tomorrow. I also practiced Taekwondo, and there was a flyer in my Taekwondo studio. And I never forget it. The poster over the door, it says that I never met an adult that were happy they were allowed to quit as a kid.
Oh, dang.
And I share that with teams and people. Because generally we reflect back and say, man, I talk to people all the time and they say, I wish I would have finished my degree earlier, right?
Right.
I wish I would have, they may be 60 years old and they say, man, I really go back. And they typically, you go back and you think about the things that you did not complete in life. You don't think about the things you completed in life or the things you're
Right.
completing, because the mind, the nature of the mind is to gravitate towards the negative. And so, and I'm bringing that back because your question about, what do? You got to basically understand every day you don't feel like waking up, that you got to overcome that, because it's the nature of the mind is to focus on the negative. And each time you overcome that, you're just building your mind. And I think it's one of the things that really the military at a young age helps individuals overcome, is that ability to basically say, if they're committed and they allow themselves to develop, they can truly at a young age actually learn that positive mindset, just reinforcing those values they were taught as kids, that they can overcome things.
That's brilliant. So you brought up empathy, humility, and honor, which we can all develop, and we develop by getting up, moving forward when we don't feel like. But really, I think the greatest point, the point that I really latched onto, is when you're having that moment as a leader, you got to understand that it's something larger than self. In the Army, in the industry, higher ed, wherever it is, as a professor, same thing, right? It's larger than self. You have to think about the other person. And the minute you switch that mindset over, it's a who cares. It doesn't even factor into any decision making anymore, because you're looking at that higher purpose. And that's the key. I've never heard it explained that way. So I thought that was absolutely awesome. Thanks for giving me that takeaway today. That was
Yes, sir.
fantastic. So what if you talking to either a junior leader, somebody looking to get into leadership, and maybe they don't have that military experience where we're taught to focus on the bigger picture, what advice would you give them? So what did you learn during your time of service that you could give that junior leader?
Live faithfully. And that may mean a lot of things to different people. And going back to humility, profound humility is just so important. And then patience, to have heroic patience. And then I would say those are whether someone served in the military, but those are three sort of universal virtues, I think, that can that not the only three, but three that can actually help any leader. Life is a journey, and the thing we haven't touched on is the patience piece, but it's so easy in life to get in a hurry. And it's really the journey, patience, and actually enjoying the process that you really learn. And by having that patience piece as a developing or emerging leader, is only going to give you more experiences to improve and be a better leader. Because we've all been led by individuals that did not actually have that patience, did not have that strategic pause, or did not have that set of experiences that allowed them to pull from their kit bag, their toolbox, and be able to help and shape a situation. And or even, just didn't have the patience to listen to others, didn't have the
Right.
humility to listen and just was quick to judge. And there are so many examples, whether it's religious context or, or just watching other people that are either leading you or that you admire, and just watch how they behave and say, hey, and just go through a day in a non-judgmental way and just try and be present and just observe the different encounters, and then go back and just spend some time reflecting. And what you'll find is that I think those three, among others, will rise to the top as being just things that as a human, you want someone that if you're pouring out your heart and to someone, the thing that you want is them, first of all, show empathy, some degree of humility and patience, right? To allow you to finish what you're saying. And so those are just three, leading by position or just leading by where you are in life. So we all are leaders, right? And we're leading somebody, and like I go back to what my mentor said, the first person you're leading is yourself. And so everybody's a leader, right? You're leading yourself. And again, that's where it starts.
Wow. So there's a whole lot to take away from that. Sometimes creating that patience so you can let things unfold and let situations take some shape before you make a decision. That's powerful, because if a situation isn't in a place where you can make a educated decision, you have to pause. You have to wait and just watch and let it unfold, because that's an action in and of itself, just kind of pausing and letting things shape up a little bit so you can make a decision, especially as a leader. Man, that's a whole lot of good stuff you brought to the audience today, Rob. I appreciate that. So let's just kind of wrap this up. Like I said, I could talk to you forever. Especially we have to talk offline about Taekwondo. I love Taekwondo. We, my boys and daughter and everybody did that for a long time as well. It's a lot of good lessons there. Maybe we have another podcast there, learning lessons from Taekwondo. All right. So Rob, I just want to thank you for taking your time to be here. And this is our Veterans Day podcast. I want to say thank you, and thanks to all the veterans out there, previous generations, as you brought up, who we owe so much to, all those previous generations who sacrificed so much so we could be here and have this conversation, the folks that are out there now serving in an active capacity, and all those who have served prior to that. We just want to give a great big thank you and let you know that what you're learning out there transfers a whole lot into reality, corporate world, business, whatever you may think. All right. Well, this is what learning feels like. And thank you so much, Rob. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of LAPUx Lessons. We hope that you had fun learning something new today. If you did, please take a few seconds to review our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. We value your feedback so highly because we are doing this for you. Come connect with us on social media so we can get to know you better. All of our channels are listed in the show description. Before you go, we want to invite you to visit x.lapu.edu to see the courses that our awesome team has created. Check back often, as we are always developing new offerings. Or you can subscribe to this podcast, where we will announce and feature new courses as they become available. That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, this is what learning feels like.